I secured a credit card for my mother's medical expenses. Days later, I spotted images of my sister vacationing in Hawaii. When questioned about her funds, she smirked. Courtesy of your credit card. No worries, I merely spent $100,000. I chuckled and replied, my card's limit is $100. Did you check the name? Then my mother produced my gold card. The screen glowed with an impossible blue, a tropical fantasy made of pixelated sand and grinning teeth. Rachel's face, half hidden by a monstrous drink, was a cruel taunt, and the words, Hawaii is amazing. Don't worry, I only spent $100,000. You're welcome for the frequent flyer miles, punched the air out of my lungs in a cold, brutal shock. My stomach had already dropped somewhere around my knees, a knot of dread tightening with every word. I was in a budget meeting, surrounded by fluorescent lights and the drone of quarterly projections, but the world suddenly tilted, threatening to swallow me whole. My fingers trembled as I typed, demanding answers, but they already knew. The response came in seconds, the sheer audacity of it burning my eyes. My credit card. $100,000. The hallway outside the conference room felt blessedly cool against my palm, anchoring me as I fought for breath, for clarity. This had to be some sick joke. Rachel thrived on drama, on eliciting extreme reactions, but even for her, this felt like a new, terrifying low. Then the phone buzzed again, a new image confirming my worst fears. Rachel, lounging by an infinity pool, designer shades glinting, followed by a third, showcasing a chaotic sprawl of Gucci, Prada, and Louis Vuitton bags across a hotel bed. The carefully constructed walls of my reality were crumbling. I called her, the phone pressed hard against my ear, listening to the ocean sounds in the background before she finally answered, her voice dripping with an almost saccharine, false cheer. I was wondering when you'd notice, she chirped. My own voice came out sharper than I intended, a jagged edge of panic slicing through the forced calm. What are you talking about? What credit card? And then, the casual, dismissive reply that would haunt me, the one Mom gave me, obviously. She said you opened it specifically to help the family, so I figured you wouldn't mind me using it for a little vacation. I've been so stressed lately. Here's the thing about family dynamics. Sometimes, the most profound betrayals aren't born of malice, but of a deeply ingrained system of enabling. My mother, in her desire to alleviate Rachel's perceived suffering, had become an unwitting accomplice in her daughter's destruction, and mine. She hadn't seen the larger, insidious pattern at play. Every piece of the puzzle started clicking into place, forming a picture I desperately wanted to unsee. Just 3 weeks prior, Mom had been diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer, stage 3. The treatment was extensive, agonizingly expensive, even with insurance. Dad had been gone 2 years, leaving her with the house, but little else, his final illness having drained her savings dry. I'd researched every option, contacted every foundation, applied for every grant. Nothing covered the gap. So, I'd done the only thing I could. I opened a medical credit card with a $200,000 limit. The interest rate was predatory, criminal even, but there was a 12-month zero-interest promotional period. I'd run the numbers 1,000 times, overtime, cutting every expense, picking up freelance work. I could pay it off before the rates kicked in. I'd handed the card to Mom 2 weeks ago with explicit, written instructions, medical expenses only. Chemotherapy, radiation, medications, consultations. Rachel, I said slowly, the words heavy and deliberate, that card was for Mom's cancer treatment. Her tone instantly shifted, the fake sweetness curdling into something sharp and dismissive. Oh, please. Mom's fine. She's got insurance, doesn't she? Besides, you make way more money than I do. You can afford it. My hands had gone numb. You stole a medical credit card and went on vacation. I didn't steal anything. Mom gave it to me. She said you wanted to help family, and I'm family. Stop being so dramatic. I threatened to retrieve the card, but she laughed, cold and unconcerned. Too late. I already maxed it out. But seriously, don't stress. Just pay the minimum payment each month. That's what credit cards are for. She hung up before I could utter another word. I stood in that hallway, the fluorescent lights humming, for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, my brain repeatedly slamming against a wall of disbelief. Rachel had always been selfish, a master manipulator who could twist any situation to cast herself as the victim, but this crossed every boundary I thought existed. What I found next would change everything. I called Mom. Her voice was tired, but still held that familiar warmth. Sweetheart. Mom, did you give Rachel my credit card? A pause, pregnant with a truth I already knew. She needed help, honey. She's been going through such a difficult time since her breakup. My vision blurred with unshed tears, frustration warring with despair. That card was for your medical bills. I know, but Rachel was so upset, and she promised she'd only use a little bit, just enough for a short trip to clear her head. She said she'd pay you back. She spent $100,000. A long silence, then a small, broken "oh." I described the photos, the designer bags, the 5-star resort. Oh no, she whispered. Why would you give her that card? Her voice cracked. She said her boss was treating her terribly. She needed a break or she'd have a breakdown. She promised it would just be a few thousand. A cheap beach somewhere. I thought. I didn't think she'd. I finished her sentence, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Lie to you again. Mom began to cry softly. I'm so sorry. I'll talk to her. I'll make her pay it back. With what money, Mom? She hadn't held a job for more than 6 months in 5 years. I hung up and immediately dialed the credit card company. The customer service representative listened with practiced sympathy, but offered zero helpful solutions. I understand your frustration, Miss Walker, but your mother is listed as an authorized user on the account. She had legal permission to give the card to anyone she chose. The charges are valid. I tried to report it as fraud, but the answer remained a steel door. Authorized user meant authorized use, regardless of intent. By the time I got home, the math had been done 17 different ways. $100,000 plus the $70,000 I'd already earmarked for Mom's treatment. $170,000. My salary was good, but not that good. Even with the promotional rate, the minimum payments would crush me. I barely slept. Every time my eyes closed, I saw those Hawaiian photos, Rachel grinning, oblivious to the chasm she'd opened beneath me. Or perhaps indifferent. And then, Mom's face, realizing my own naive stupidity in trusting either of them. The next morning, another text from Rachel. Stop being mad. It's just money. You'll make more. Something in my chest, which had been a tangled mess of pain and confusion, crystallized. A cold, clear determination. This is a classic example of gaslighting, the primary manipulator, Rachel, dismissing the severe emotional and financial harm she'd caused, making me feel like I was the one overreacting. Her message wasn't an apology, it was a further attempt to control the narrative and my emotions, forcing me to internalize her reality instead of my own. I called Olivia Chin, my attorney. She listened, her silence a steadying presence. Do you want to pursue legal action against your sister? I want to understand my options. Olivia laid it out. Suing would be easy. Collecting would be impossible if Rachel had no assets. Fraud? Not in the credit card company's eyes. So, I'm just supposed to absorb this? My head pounded. Not necessarily. Tell me more about your family dynamics. For the next hour, I poured out years of Rachel's manipulative behavior. The totaled car, the stolen high school money, the squandered college fund. Olivia cut to the chase. Your mother enables her. And you've been absorbing the consequences to keep the peace. What did that have to do with the debt? Everything. Because here's what I think you should do. Stop protecting them from reality. She outlined a plan. It was ruthless, stomach-churning even. But as she spoke, a truth settled in my gut. I'd spent my entire adult life as the stable one, the fixer, the one who swallowed hurt. And where had it gotten me? $170,000 in debt because my mother had handed a medical credit card to my irresponsible sister. The next morning, coffee going cold, my hands shook as I picked up the phone. Mom answered on the second ring. Sweetheart, I'm so glad you called. I've been up all night thinking about this situation with Rachel. I need you to understand something, I interrupted, before she could launch into another apology. I opened that card specifically for your cancer treatment. Every dollar on it was meant to keep you alive. I know, sweetheart. I made a terrible mistake. You made a choice, Mom. A choice to prioritize Rachel's wants over your own medical needs. Her breath hitched. That's not fair. I didn't know she'd spend that much. You knew she'd spend something. Money I'd earmarked for your chemotherapy, and you gave her permission anyway. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I could hear her breathing, could picture her in Dad's worn recliner. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I'm not paying that debt. Either you find a way to pay for your treatment without that card, or you and Rachel figure out how to cover the charges she racked up. But I'm done being the family ATM. You're punishing me for trying to help my daughter. I'm protecting myself from being destroyed financially for your enabling. There's a difference. I hung up before the familiar guilt trip could take hold. The rest of that day crawled by. I expected relief after setting such a monumental boundary, but instead, I just felt hollow. My phone stayed silent for exactly 4 hours before the first message came through. Not Mom or Rachel, but my cousin Brittany, Rachel's age. I can't believe you're doing this to your own mother. She has cancer. Rachel told me everything, and you should be ashamed. I deleted it without responding. 3 more followed within the hour, each from a different relative, each a variation of the same script. Rachel had clearly been busy. Then Uncle Greg called, and unlike the others, he actually asked, Rachel's saying you refused to help with your mom's medical bills and that you're suing her for taking a small vacation? I laid out the facts, the medical card, the $100,000 in luxury spending, the explicit instructions. Jesus, he said when I finished. That's not what Rachel told anyone. I'm sure it's not. For what it's worth, I believe you. Rachel's always been good at spinning stories. He sighed. Look, I can't tell you what to do here, but I've watched your mom bail Rachel out for years. Maybe it's time someone stopped. After we hung up, I felt marginally less alone. One person believing me felt monumental when half the family was ready to paint me as a villain. Work became increasingly difficult to focus on. My mind replayed scenarios. What if Mom refused treatment? What if she got sicker? Would that be on me? Jennifer, a colleague, found me zoning out. You okay? Define okay. Fair point. Family stuff still. I nodded, pouring another cup of terrible office coffee. It's spreading. Half my relatives think I'm destroying the family over money. Are they offering to pay the $100,000 your sister stole? Of course not. They just think I should absorb it and move on because that's what family does. That's garbage. Family doesn't steal your credit card and go to Hawaii while your mom's fighting cancer. Hearing it stated so bluntly, by someone outside the storm, was a revelation. It was insane. I wasn't crazy for refusing to accept it. That evening, I did something I'd been avoiding. I logged into my credit card account and looked at every single charge Rachel had made. I'd seen the total, but not the itemized breakdown. Day 1. First-class flights for 2 to Hawaii, $8,347. Wait, for 2? I scrolled. Double occupancy hotel room. Couples massage. 2 sets of snorkeling equipment. Rachel hadn't gone alone. She'd taken someone, probably whatever boyfriend she was seeing that month, funded entirely by money meant for Mom's chemotherapy. The rage that hit me was white-hot, dizzying. I had to set my laptop aside, walk away before I threw it across the room. She'd taken a romantic vacation. While Mom was scheduling oncology consultations, Rachel was sipping cocktails with some guy, living like royalty on stolen money. I called Olivia. I need to amend the lawsuit. She didn't just steal the money for herself. She took someone else on vacation, too. That doesn't change the legal framework, but it does make it more egregious. Send me the itemized charges. After sending the records, I sat in my quiet apartment, trying to process the depth of Rachel's selfishness. This wasn't a desperate person making a bad choice. This was calculated, planned, deliberately cruel. She'd been planning it for weeks, probably invited her boyfriend before even asking Mom for the card. The crying, the breakdown, the promises of just a little bit all a con. My phone buzzed. Another family member with a Bible verse about forgiveness. I blocked the number and poured myself a glass of wine. The preliminary hearing for the emergency motion to freeze the card was quick. Mom's attorney argued it would prevent her medical care. Olivia countered, calmly, precisely, Miss Walker's mother has insurance. The card was supplementary. Given the demonstrated pattern of misuse, my client is already facing crushing debt through no fault of her own. The judge ruled in my favor. The remaining $96,000 credit limit was frozen. Mom called, furious. You're trying to control my medical care now. What if I need that money? You need it for chemotherapy, not for funding Rachel's lifestyle. The manipulation was so blatant it almost made me laugh. You're not dying because of me. You're dying because you're choosing not to get treatment as a power play. That's on you. She hung up. The next call went to Rachel, who'd made it back from Hawaii. Finally decided to forgive me, she asked brightly. I need you to pay back the $100,000 you stole. Her laugh was sharp, disbelieving. You wouldn't. Mom will never forgive you. Mom can choose whose side she's on, but the consequences are on you this time. I hung up, my hands shaking. I'd never stood up to Rachel like that, never pushed back against Mom's guilt trips. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Olivia filed the lawsuit the following Monday. Mom called 17 times. Her messages progressed from hurt to angry to desperate. How can you do this to your own sister? Your father would be ashamed. Please, sweetheart, let's talk. We're a family. I deleted them all. 3 days later, Aunt Paula called. Mom's older sister, the only one who never sugarcoated Rachel's behavior. Your mother is having a meltdown, she said, without preamble. I imagine so. She called me crying, saying you're suing Rachel and refusing to help with her medical bills. That's partially accurate. Good. It's about time someone held those two accountable. I blinked. You're not calling to tell me I'm a terrible daughter? God, no. I've been watching Rachel manipulate your mother for decades, and I've watched you sacrifice yourself trying to hold everything together. This needed to happen 20 years ago. The relief that washed over me was almost painful. I thought everyone would side with them. Your mother's siblings are split, I won't lie. But I'm in your corner. So is your Uncle David. We've both offered to help with her treatment costs, but she's refusing because she's mad at you. She's refusing cancer treatment to punish me for not enabling Rachel? Apparently, she says if you won't help family, she doesn't want anyone's help. The manipulation was so textbook, I almost laughed. That's her choice. I agree. Just wanted you to know you're not alone in this. That conversation stayed with me for days. Mom was escalating, using her own health as a bargaining chip. It should have made me feel guilty. Instead, I just felt tired. The lawsuit moved forward. Rachel hired a cheap attorney who tried to argue the debt was a gift. Olivia demolished that argument with documentation, the card's intended purpose, my written instructions, Rachel's own texts bragging about the spending. The preliminary hearing was on a Tuesday morning. I watched Rachel squirm under questioning, trying tears, misunderstanding, implying I was wealthy enough to absorb the loss. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair, had zero patience. Miss Walker, she addressed Rachel, you received a credit card explicitly designated for your mother's cancer treatment and spent $100,000 on a vacation. My mother gave me permission. Did you know the card's intended purpose? Rachel hesitated. I thought there was enough for both. Did you verify that before spending? No. Did you ask your sister? She would have said no. So, you knowingly spent money allocated for your mother's medical care on a personal luxury vacation without confirming whether such funds were available or appropriate? Rachel's attorney objected, but the judge waved him off. I'm ordering a full accounting of the charges. We'll reconvene in 30 days. Outside, Rachel cornered me. You're really going through with this? You're going to destroy your own sister over money. You destroyed yourself, Rachel. I'm just refusing to pay for it anymore. Mom's not getting treatment because of you. Mom's not getting treatment because she's using cancer as emotional blackmail. That's on her, not me. Everyone thinks you're heartless. Everyone who matters knows the truth. She stormed off, designer heels clicking. Probably bought on my credit card. This moment illustrates the severe strain on familial bonds when one member persistently operates from a place of self-interest and a refusal to acknowledge consequences. It highlights how enabling, though often stemming from love, ultimately fosters a cycle of irresponsibility and further division, fracturing the family unit in profound ways. Work became my refuge. Jennifer found me at my desk late one evening. Family stuff. The kind you want to talk about or the kind you want to forget. I surprised myself by telling her, "Your sister spent $100,000 on vacation while your mom has cancer, essentially. And your mom gave her the card." Jennifer shook her head slowly. "That's a whole different level. It gets better. Half of them think I'm the villain for not just absorbing the debt." That's insane. You know that's insane, right? Hearing someone outside validate my reality was a powerful antidote to the constant barrage of family judgment. Some days I'm sure. Other days I wonder if I'm overreacting. You're not. Trust me. What they did is completely messed up. The preliminary accounting confirmed it. Rachel had spent $13,847.62 in 5 days. The itemized list was infuriating. First-class plane tickets. Presidential suite. Spa treatments that cost more than my monthly rent. Shopping sprees that would have funded Mom's entire first round of chemotherapy. Jennifer's joy actually dropped. She spent $9,000 in one store. The accounting also revealed something else. Rachel had attempted to make additional charges after maxing out the card. Luxury car rental, high-end restaurant reservations, more shopping. The card had declined all of them. She hadn't planned to stop at $100,000. She would have kept spending until someone physically stopped her. Olivia used that detail to strengthen our case. This shows intent and complete disregard for consequences. She wasn't trying to take a modest vacation. She was deliberately draining every available resource. The documentation even showed she'd extended her stay twice, booking more expensive accommodations. The presidential suite for the last 2 nights had cost $4,500 per night. I thought about my own modest one-bedroom, $1,400 a month. Rachel had spent more than 3 months of my rent on 2 nights in a hotel, using money meant to keep our mother alive. The rage had transformed into something colder, icy determination. Rachel needed to face consequences for once, and I was going to make sure it happened. Meanwhile, Mom's condition declined faster. Aunt Paula's updates grew progressively more concerning. She's lost 15 pounds. Exhausted all the time. The oncologist is basically begging her to start treatment. What does she say? That she can't afford it because her ungrateful daughter froze her credit card and is suing her other daughter into poverty. Paula, I didn't freeze her medical care. I froze a credit card she'd already proven she couldn't be trusted with. She has insurance. You and Uncle David offered to help. She's choosing martyrdom. I know. Believe me, I know. I told her yesterday that she's being ridiculous and needs to grow up. We had a screaming match. I'm sorry. Don't be. Someone needed to say it. I just wish it hadn't taken her getting this sick for me to finally stop coddling her. That conversation stayed with me. Paula had enabled Mom, just as Mom had enabled Rachel. Now Paula was breaking that pattern, but possibly too late. The weight of that reality pressed down on me. Mom might die because she was too stubborn to accept help that came with accountability. I wasn't okay with it. But I also wasn't going to break, wasn't going to rush in and fix everything like I always had. That pattern had nearly destroyed me. Breaking it hurt, but staying in it would have been worse. Rachel, meanwhile, had started a social media campaign, painting herself as the victim. My sister is suing me for taking one vacation after years of struggling with my mental health. Family is supposed to support each other, not tear each other down. Broken heart emoji. Hundreds of sympathetic comments poured in. She's crowdfunding for legal fees now, Tyler texted. Rachel had posted photos of herself looking sad, a long story about how she'd used a family credit card with permission for a modest trip and was now being viciously sued by her wealthy sister who wanted to see her destroyed. The goal was $50,000. She'd already raised $3,200. People are actually giving her money, I said aloud to my empty apartment. Unfortunately, the crowdfunding page is a problem, Olivia said. Not legally, but optically. She's creating a narrative where she's the underdog and you're the villain. Judges don't look kindly on defendants who claim poverty while soliciting funds for living expenses that likely won't go toward the judgment. What should I do? Nothing publicly. Don't respond. Don't engage. Let the court proceedings speak for themselves. It was good advice, but following it was torture. I wanted to post the itemized charges, the hotel records. I wanted everyone to see the truth. But I stayed quiet, gritting my teeth through every sympathetic comment. Then a coworker, who followed Rachel, made a comment at lunch. I saw that post about your family situation. That's really rough having family drama play out in court. Silence. 5 pairs of eyes on me. It's complicated, I said neutrally. Your sister seems really upset about the whole thing. Jennifer jumped in. I think this might be one of those situations where social media doesn't tell the whole story. The subject changed, but the damage was done. My coworkers looked at me differently. I pulled Jennifer aside. Thanks for redirecting. No problem. Though I have to say, your sister is doing a really good job making herself look sympathetic online. She's had a lot of practice playing the victim. Before the next hearing, Aunt Paula called. Your mother's in the hospital. My heart stopped. What happened? She collapsed. Dehydration and weakness. The cancer is progressing without treatment. Is she okay? For now. But the doctor was pretty blunt. She needs to start chemotherapy immediately or the prognosis gets significantly worse. I closed my eyes. She's still refusing? She told the oncologist she couldn't afford it because her daughter wouldn't help her. The manipulation was so blatant, I almost admired the audacity. I'll go see her. Be prepared. She's dug in. The hospital room was private, quiet. Mom looked smaller, paler. You came, she whispered. Of course I came. I didn't think you cared anymore. I pulled up a chair. I've always cared. That's why I opened the credit card in the first place. Then why are you punishing me? I'm not punishing you. I'm establishing boundaries that should have existed years ago. She closed her eyes. I'm dying and you're talking about boundaries. You're dying because you're choosing not to get treatment as a way to manipulate me into backing down. That's not on me. Her eyes flew open. How dare you? Mom, I love you, but I'm not going to set myself on fire to keep you warm. Especially when you're the one who handed Rachel the matches. You had one job with that credit card, and you failed. You chose Rachel's once over your own life, and now you're trying to make that my responsibility. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I just wanted both my daughters to be happy. At what cost? My financial security, your life? Where does it end? She didn't answer. I stood up. I love you enough to watch you make your own choices, even terrible ones. But I won't sacrifice my future to enable your mistakes. When you're ready to actually get treatment I'm still willing to help arrange through legitimate means, call me. Until then, I hope you figure out what's actually important to you. I made it to my car before the sobs came, huge, gasping sobs that shook my entire body. Because despite everything, despite the manipulation and the years of being taken for granted, she was still my mother. And watching her choose pride and manipulation over survival was agonizing. But I didn't go back. I didn't call. I didn't break. 2 weeks later, Aunt Paula called again. Your mom started treatment. I gripped the phone tighter. What changed? Uncle David and I sat her down and told her we'd cover the costs, but only if she stopped the nonsense with you and Rachel. We also told her that if she refused treatment one more time to play mind games, we'd walk away and let her deal with the consequences alone. She listened. She didn't have much choice. The doctor scared her straight about how fast the cancer was advancing. Reality finally got through. Is she still mad at me? Furious. But she's getting chemotherapy, so I'll take it. Relief and grief tangled in my chest. Thank you for stepping in. We should have done it years ago. I'm sorry we left you to deal with her and Rachel alone for so long. The civil suit against Rachel proceeded to final judgment. She was ordered to pay the full amount, plus interest and court costs. The judge's written opinion included pointed commentary about unconscionable misappropriation of medical funds and flagrant disregard for familial obligations. Not that it mattered practically. Rachel had no income, no assets. The judgment would sit there, accruing interest, probably forever. But Olivia had one more card to play. We can garnish her wages. She says she doesn't have a job. She will eventually. And when she does, a portion of every paycheck will go toward this debt until it's paid. It'll follow her for years. Good. There's also her tax refunds. Any inheritance. Any lottery winnings. Basically, any money that comes to her through legal channels can be intercepted. The idea of Rachel spending years looking over her shoulder, watching potential money slip away before she could touch it, satisfied something dark and justified in my soul. 6 months passed. Mom completed her first round of chemotherapy. The cancer responded well. Paula sent regular updates, but Mom and I still hadn't spoken directly. Rachel, meanwhile, had spiraled. According to family gossip, she'd tried to get several jobs, only to have the wage garnishment scare off employers. She'd moved back in with Mom briefly, but they'd fought constantly. Last I heard, she was living with some boyfriend in a questionable part of town. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, sad, and relieved in equal measures. Then one Tuesday evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mom standing there, thinner than before, but steady on her feet. Can I come in? I stepped aside wordlessly. She sat on my couch, hands folded in her lap. I owe you an apology. Okay. I spent a lot of time in treatment thinking about how we got here. About all the times I chose Rachel's feelings over your needs, about how I taught her that tears and manipulation would get her what she wanted. And I taught you that your job was to hold everything together. I sat down across from her, not trusting myself to speak. Paula made me see a therapist. She said it was part of her conditions for helping with treatment. I fought it at first, but... She paused, taking a breath. The therapist asked me why I gave Rachel the credit card. I said because she was crying, because she needed help. And the therapist asked why I didn't consider that you might need help too. That you'd taken on an enormous financial burden to save my life, and I'd undermine that to spare Rachel's feelings. What did you say? My voice came out rough. I didn't have an answer, because I'd never thought about it that way. I'd always just thought of you as strong, as capable, as someone who could handle things. And I took advantage of that. Tears were building behind my eyes, but I held them back. I'm sorry, Mom. Continued. I'm sorry for giving her the card. I'm sorry for trying to guilt you into fixing it. I'm sorry for using my illness to manipulate you. I'm sorry for every time I chose keeping the peace over protecting you. Why now? Why apologize now? Because I almost died choosing pride over sense. Because my sister told me if I didn't get my act together, I'd lose both my daughters instead of just one. Because I finally realized that enabling Rachel wasn't helping her. It was destroying her. And it was destroying you too. We sat in silence. I can't go back to how things were, I said finally. I can't be the one who fixes everything while getting hurt in the process. I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking for a chance to do better. What about Rachel? Mom's face fell. I told her she needed to get a job and start making payments on the judgment. She screamed at me that it was my fault for not giving her the life she deserved. We haven't spoken in 2 months. I'm sorry. Don't be. I created that monster. Now I have to live with it. But I don't have to keep feeding it. Over the following months, Mom and I rebuilt something. Not what we'd had before, that was gone, burned away by betrayal and hard truths, but something more honest, more balanced. She updated me on her treatment. I told her about work. We didn't talk about Rachel unless necessary. The credit card debt got transferred to a personal loan with a slightly better interest rate. I'd paid off about $30,000 so far through aggressive budgeting and overtime. It would take years, but I'd manage. Rachel resurfaced occasionally in family gossip. She'd bounced between 3 more boyfriends, been fired from 2 jobs. She declared bankruptcy, which wiped out most of her other debts, but didn't touch the judgment I held. I didn't feel triumphant about her struggles. I just felt done. 2 years after the Hawaii trip, I got a letter from a debt collection agency. Rachel had gotten a decent-paying job, and they'd started garnishing her wages. The first payment was $347.82. I stared at that check for a long time. It represented roughly 3 hours of the vacation she'd stolen from Mom's cancer treatment. At this rate, she'd be paying for the next 25 years. I deposited it without ceremony and got on with my life. Mom's cancer went into remission. She apologized to Paula and David for her behavior and worked hard in therapy to understand her enabling patterns. She even sent Rachel a letter saying she loved her but wouldn't be offering financial or housing support anymore. Rachel responded with a vicious tirade that Mom showed to her therapist instead of hiding. Progress. I dated someone for a while, a man who asked good questions and actually listened to the answers. We didn't work out long term, but the relationship taught me I was capable of trusting someone again. Work promoted me. The raise helped with the debt payments. Life moved forward. Sometimes I still saw those photos in my mind, Rachel grinning in Hawaii, drink in hand, my financial security draining away with every swipe of that card. Sometimes I wondered if I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I remembered Mom's face in that hospital bed, choosing manipulation over treatment. I remembered years of swallowing hurt to keep the peace. I remembered the sick feeling of discovering $13,000 in fraudulent shopping charges. And I remembered that I'd finally learned to put on my own oxygen mask first. The debt would eventually be paid. Mom was alive and learning healthier patterns. Rachel was facing consequences for the first time in her adult life. None of it was perfect. Most of it still hurt. But I was still standing, still solvent, still capable of building a life that didn't require me to set myself on fire. That had to count for something. When does the pursuit of keeping the peace within a family become an act of self-destruction? And how do you find the courage to prioritize your own well-being over the comfort of others, even when it means facing their wrath?